Welcome back to Simple Truth. Hey, we've been in the story of Joseph. As I've said every time, we're getting to the good part. So maybe somewhere along the line we'll get to the really, really good part, but right now we're in just the good part, right? I talked to you last time about the fact that we need to be where God wants us to be, that God was manipulating his plan, right? Putting it into action, getting people where he needed them to be. Do you know that I think, it doesn't really matter what I think, but I do think that most people frustrate God because they just refuse to be in the right place. They're constantly out of place, right? It's like my tools, right? If my tools were in the right place, my life would be a lot easier, but they're constantly out of place. Do you know why they're out of place? Because I put them out of place, right? Because I run out to my tractor in the hayfield and I need a tool and I grab it and I fix something and then I take it back and I don't put it back where it belongs. I put it on the shelf and then I have a shelf full of tools, but they're not sorted and I don't know, where they are, what everything is, and it's frustrating. And I think it's the same thing with God. God looks at us and he just says, would you just stand still for a second, Andy? Be in the right place. If you were in the right place, then I could bring this person and this person and this person, and we could put it all together. But we don't like standing still. We don't like being still. We don't like anything that has to do with still, right? And so we're constantly out of place. And so we get into 42 and we realize, okay, here's the deal. Joseph is in Egypt. Joseph's been elevated to number 2. Joseph has power. Joseph has food, right? Now the key here is God says, hey, let's get Jacob and family to Egypt because I got to fulfill this promise I said to Abraham. And we talked about that last week. So he moves all of the parts, right? I want to pick up in verse 6 of chapter 42 in Genesis. Says this: now Joseph was governor. Isn't that funny that Joseph is doing the exact same thing that he's been doing in Potiphar's house? He's the head of the servants. In prison, he's the head of the prison. Right now, he's got an official title. I wish I could spend the rest of the time, which I might, talking about how much I hate titles. Like, look at, do you see that Joseph was the same, doing the exact same thing, but only in one place does he have an official title that actually is good in nature, right? I don't really understand what being head of the servants is if you're still a servant, right? I'm not really sure that being head of the prison is a good title if you're a prisoner in the prison, right? But hey, maybe it works well for you, right? But he's now governor. He's got a title. With that title comes authority. With that authority comes power. With that power comes resources. Where did he get all of that stuff? You know where he got all that stuff? Because he was faithful in the little. And all of a sudden, God says, hey, if you're faithful in a little, I'll make you faithful in a lot. I'll give you a chance to be faithful in a lot. And he does that. Isn't it funny that principle's in the New Testament, but we find it applied in the Old Testament? We see a picture of it where Joseph, he has been faithful in the little, and now he's faithful with a lot. So Joseph's where he needs to be, right? And again, we were talking about before the fact that Joseph's about ready to start the process of having his dream really fulfilled, right? This whole process is about his dream of his father and his brothers bowing down to him fulfilled, but he's about ready to have it really start to ramp up. Do you know some of us feel that way right now? We feel like God has promised us things. We've been in this kind of slow turtle pace. Don't touch the turtle thing, right? And we feel like if we do something wrong, right, if we touch the turtle, we're going to get fined. So we're so worried about, if I just do something wrong, it's going to prolong this and it's going to be this. And we have right to do that because the Bible tells us that the people of Israel did that and got 40 years out in the wilderness, right? They touched the turtle and got fined. Right? They did these kind of things that caused them problems. And so we have reason to be concerned about this. But God says, if you're really focused on me, if you're really trying, then you know what? I'm not fining you for trying. Right? So he finds us for unbelief. He finds us for all kinds of things, right? Now it sounds like God's some dictator, right? And when I say fine, it means we just prolong things. We make things harder than they're supposed to be. We do all this kind of stuff, right? Because we're just not where we're supposed to be doing what we're supposed to be doing. So again, he's fulfilling his promise to Abraham. It's about ready to ramp up, right? And take a big move. Now, again, God's promise to Abraham is 400 years in nature. Right? So there's the promise to Abraham. There's 25 years of waiting for the promise to even start with his son Isaac. Right? And then there's all of that stuff that happens. And now we get to the story of Joseph, and he's about ready to ramp it up. The people, Abraham's people, are all going to be right where God said they're going to be. But after this, there's going to be hundreds more years where they're waiting for the rest of the promise, right? Where they're waiting for Moses to finally be born, right? Which is the problem. God knows Moses is going to be born. He's outside of time. He's looking at the whole thing going, soon it's going to happen, right? It's going to happen. And the people are like, yeah, soon. God's like, well, soon is in my vocabulary, not soon as defined by your vocabulary. So we've got Abraham's promise, we've got Joseph where he's supposed to be, and we got to get Jacob and his brothers. We've read the story. Now look at verse 6. Now Joseph was governor over the land. I got stuck there. He was the one who sold to all the people of the land. He's perfectly placed. Perfectly placed to do what? Right. He was perfectly placed for Joseph's brothers. And says, and Joseph's brothers came and they bowed themselves before him with their faces to the ground. Listen to that. Look at that. Isn't that amazing? Dream 1 fulfilled. Right? Brothers coming and bowing down, faces to the ground in front of Joseph. Why? Because he was exactly where he needed to be. He followed the process, right? And God then placed him in the exact right moment. Are you waiting for God to do something in your life? If you're waiting for God to do something in your life, you might want to work really hard at just being, period. Then being in the right place, period. Then being in the right place with the right people, with the right attitude, right? Let God bring all that to you, right? I've talked about this recently. The church that I'm in, I started out being there for like 6 months. That was the idea. Now I've been there for 8 years, right? And the concept was, during this 8 years, I've prayed. I knew God was going to do something. I've known God's going to do something with this church, right? With or without me, this church has been set aside by God, right? Been anointed, been confirmed by lots of different people. And you're waiting, and you're waiting, and you're waiting, and you're waiting. And that frustration comes as, I don't want to just be waiting. I want to be doing something. I want to be so. But I'm watching as God is bringing the right people, right? Because God's doing something in their life as well as my life. And he's bringing them around, and he's bringing them to the right place at the right time. Do you know the problem is? I know they're in the right place. I think the time should be now. And God's saying, now the time is a little bit longer, right? God says soon, very soon, very, very soon. And then he says now, right? And guess what? There's a lot of time between soon and very soon and very soon and very, very soon and very, very, very soon and now. But when now comes, it just happens. All of a sudden, poof, what God has ordained, what God has affirmed happened. One day, David was sitting, twiddling his thumbs, watching his 600 mighty men, right? Watching his kids play, all these things. And all of a sudden, a servant guy comes up to him with the crown of Saul. Whoa, that wasn't how David woke up in the morning thinking the day was going to go. And God didn't say, hey, it's going to be today. What God told him was, hey, you're anointed to be king way back here. And one day, the crown came to David. David didn't have to go to the crown, right? Super relevant. Wish I could get it, because if I could get it, I'd be in a much better place in life. Wait for your brothers to come to you. Wait for the crown to come to you. Wait for what God has for you to come to you. Hey, thanks for letting me ramble. Another simple truth. We'll see you next time back in the story of Joseph.